Hello and welcome. India has reported 24,882 fresh COVID-19 cases. That is the highest number of cases this year, the highest number of cases so far. The number of infections reported today is the highest daily since December 20th, when as many as 26,624 new infections were recorded. The number of fresh infections is nearly 7% higher than Friday, when India registered 23,285 cases. So overall, India has now recorded 1,13,33,728 cases since the outbreak a year ago. That's right, it has been a year since the first cases were being recorded in India. Now, all of this is according to government data updated on Saturday, and in the last 24 hours, India has reported 140 deaths linked to the virus, taking the total number of fatalities to 1,58,446. Maharashtra, Kerala, Punjab, Karnataka, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu account for 85.6% of the new cases. So 5 states are cumulatively accounting for 82.96%, almost 83% of the total active cases in the country. 2 states, Maharashtra and Kerala, accounting for 71% of India's total cases. So India witnessing a worrying spike in the rate of COVID-19 infections, even as we are charging ahead with an intensive and accelerating inoculation drive, through which more than 2.80 crore vaccine doses have been administered. So with these facts and figures in mind, what do you need to do to keep your loved ones safe? Let's ask Dr. Guleria, the director of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Guleria, as usual, we are grateful for your time. But Dr. Guleria, just as we thought that we were around the bend, cases are now rising again. First and foremost, are we in a second wave?
Well, it looks like that we are heading for a second wave. We are seeing a rising trend and the number of cases are rising. So I don't think we have much doubt that there is a surge that is happening. We are seeing a wave. What we need to do is try and see how we can blunt this rise and keep this wave as small as possible, rather than having a huge surge in the number of cases. But the data of the last few days do suggest that we are seeing another wave coming, and we need to be very careful. We need to be very aggressive so that it doesn't really become as big as in the past. And we learn from the lessons of the past and really implement things so that we can save lives and really prevent a lot of loss to our economy and other things which we are really looking forward to.
So then Dr. Guleria is saying that it looks like we are in a second wave, and while this second wave of the epidemic has set off alarm bells, is it a reassuring sign that the severity of the disease appears to be significantly less than before? I mean, if you look at the declining death rate, cases are up, but the death rate seems to be falling. Is that true, and does that mean that the ongoing second COVID-19 wave is milder then?
So as of now, the death rate is low, and therefore that is something that is heartening. But as the cases will increase and the number of individuals getting infected become more and more, we'll have a larger number of people who have comorbidities, who may be elderly and may get severe disease, and therefore it may actually then lead to a higher mortality. This is what we also saw in the UK when we had the UK strain. Initially, it was felt that this strain is leading to increase in number of cases. Mortality was low, but later on it also started contributing to a mortality. And that is why I think we need to be very, very aggressive right now, rather than regretting few days or weeks later.
So we need to be very aggressive. Dr. Guleria there sounding the alarm there. But Dr. Guleria, explain this to us, please. We've begun our vaccination drive. We started way back in January 16th. According to the government, this is the rollout of the biggest vaccination drive in the world. The government estimates that 30 crore people, this includes frontline workers, healthcare workers, people above the age of 50, those with comorbidities, they're all being vaccinated in this second phase now. And over the next few months, they're saying we'll see 30 crore. We are seeing at least 20 lakh vaccinations a day. So then why still are the cases rising?
So if you see, the number of vaccination per day is large, but if you really look at it in terms of our population size, in terms of percentage of people being vaccinated as compared to our population, in absolute percentage it is less. So I feel we need to aggressively increase our vaccination strategy, get more and more people vaccinated. The priority groups are already there, but we need to reach out. It's not that we are all our vaccination sites are full. That means we still have the capacity to vaccinate more people. And maybe there is a reluctance in terms of people not coming to get themselves vaccinated. We need to address that. Or maybe we need to reach out to people who are not able to come to vaccination sites. It could be elderly in rural area. It could be those in urban area who are not able to come out and get themselves vaccinated. We need to reach out and get them vaccinated, develop a strategy that healthcare workers go and bring them to the vaccination site. It has to be done in an aggressive mode. We've done that in the past, like in the Pulse Polio Drive.
Yeah.
Something like that needs to be done so that you're able to quickly vaccinate a larger number of people who are in the high risk group and reach out to them rather than wait for them to come to us.
And this especially, everything that you're saying is especially crucial given the fact that the government has set a deadline of 30 crore people vaccinated by July this year. I think that means if that is the deadline or that is the goal, we need to vaccinate about 50 lakh people a day. But I think we're doing what, 20 lakh a day?
Correct. So we need to develop mass vaccination sites, develop vaccination camps, where we develop everything as per the norms in terms of monitoring for side effects, having everything available. And then as we do for our other pulse polio and other vaccination drives, in that area, get people to come together and come to the vaccination site, arrange for their transport, arrange for them to really come and have volunteers who really support all of this. So currently, there is a huge surge in the number of people coming to get vaccinated, but we need to really see that we're not missing out on those who are not able to access this. They may not be tech savvy, they may not have the means to do it, and this may be something which may be happening more in rural India also. So we need to really do a mapping of where are the vaccination gaps and how can we address them so that we don't miss out on anyone, and then move on to the next stage as early as possible. Because unlike in the past, we have another weapon with us, and that is the vaccination to fight the virus.
Yeah.
So with COVID appropriate behavior being more important but being less aggressively followed, we need to look at what other strategies that we have, and I think vaccination is the only strategy that we have right now if we really need to bring our cases down.
Well, this is the most challenging exercise for the government, vaccinating all of India, and it's very difficult to make these administrative decisions. But then, as you say, the need of the hour is to vaccinate as many people as possible. Still, we are focusing in the second phase, where it's people above 60 who are more vulnerable, who may not be able to access these sites, who may not be tech savvy, etc., etc. Given that, do you think we should just open it up so at least more numbers come? Because, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, for example, has just tweeted where she says that 24,882 fresh COVID-19 cases in India, the highest this year, not surprised at the surge. Why are we not ramping up and vaccinating the general public, especially the working class and students? She says that the US has announces from the 1st of May, India should do so sooner. Do you think that would help? Or is there a strategy when trying to get the vulnerable out vaccinated first?
Yes, so I think that would help. The challenge that we have are two. One is we must be comfortable that we have enough doses to do this, considering the size of our population. And remember, we need 2 doses.
Yeah.
So we should run up in a situation where we say we run out of the second dose. So we must be able to calculate the doses that we have on a fortnightly basis, on a monthly basis, and see that we have so many doses, and therefore we can open it out, we can prioritize it and say those who are wanting to get themselves vaccinated, even if they're not in the high risk group, can register themselves. And if we have doses available, we can enroll them, although we give the priority to the high risk group and those over the age of 60. And second issue is we need to really see how we can develop more and more sites which are available for people to come and get themselves vaccinated. So open it up. It could be like is being said in factories or in other areas where you have a large number of people staying together. So it could be a colony, it could be a factory where a large number of workers and their parents are staying, and many of them may be high risk group. So I'm sure a lot of industrial support will come for that, and that could also be looked at as a model where they can also come into the vaccination drive.
And talking about prioritizing certain groups, the other twist in this whole, trying to roll out this drive is the fact that we also have elections this month in these crucial states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, West Bengal and Assam. Do you think these states should be prioritized with, increased vaccinations, poll workers, dare I even say journalists added to the priority list simply because of the numbers that are gathering in these states?
Yes, it's going to be a huge challenge because these states are going for polls, and we know what we've seen this in Bihar also when election was there, that there was really no COVID appropriate behavior. There was huge rallies, there were no masks being worn, and now with the surge in number of cases in many states where these cases are rising and they are also going for polls, it's a little bit of a worrying situation. We will have to develop strategies, and one strategy is to see whether we can ramp up vaccination at least in these areas, especially for those who are likely to get exposed during the polling part. So it could also be the people involved in the polling itself.
Of course. The other big story, of course, this week is the DGCA stepping in today, actually saying enforce wearing masks and maintain social distancing norms at all times during air travel. This is a directive that comes amidst rising coronavirus cases in parts of India, while domestic air travel seems to be returning to pre-pandemic levels. So it sounds a bit draconian. You're saying put them on the no-fly list or deplane them, deboard them. But as a doctor, would you agree that punitive action is required because you're putting other lives at risk? And we've all heard, you go on a plane and the poor flight attendant is trying, you complain to her, she keeps trying to get somebody to put their masks on, and they're like, what are you going to do about it?
I agree with that. You see, what is happening is there is a little bit of COVID fatigue and people are not following COVID appropriate behavior, and some of them have become aggressive. There are people that I've told you must wear a mask, and they say, no, I will not wear a mask. This is my right, and this is my basic individual right to wear or not to wear a mask. My argument with them is that it's not your right. It's basically a responsibility because you could spread the infection to others. And in a closed place, it could be an airport, it could be a flight, it could be other crowded areas. Wearing a mask will not only protect you, it will protect your near and dear ones and people who are talking to you. Yeah. But this has actually really come down dramatically. There are huge parties, huge functions being held, and you would see that almost everyone is, there's no one who's wearing a mask, there's everyone who's taken their mask off.
No, but
this is something we need to really aggressively address.
But when you're at a party, these huge parties, for example, you don't need to be there. You can check out, you can move out. But when you're on a plane, let's say you have to make a journey, you don't have an option, you're a captive audience, you can't very well jump out of the window. That's why it's even more important. But you're right, doctor, people are feeling COVID fatigue. We have schools having a break coming up. Many people are starting to travel because, grandparents have gotten their first vaccine dose and they haven't seen their family for months. Would you advise travel, air travel? Is it safe? And if one has to travel by plane, what precautions, what advice should one take? What advice would you give?
So with the increasing number of cases, I would say that please avoid non-essential travel until the picture becomes more clear, because it would be very unfortunate if you travel and you get the infection while you're doing that. Secondly, COVID appropriate behavior during travel becomes more and more important. It's important otherwise, but when you're in a closed environment, when you're in a situation where you're all sitting together, remember now that you're sitting in a flight and most flights are now almost full, they're very crowded.
Yeah.
If you're not wearing a mask, if you're not having COVID appropriate behavior and you have one individual who's asymptomatic but is infectious, he can really spread the infection to a large number of people sitting next to him. So it's not only to protect yourself but your fellow passengers, that it's very important that you have COVID appropriate behavior. And I think when you're flying, it's everyone's responsibility to see that that people around you are wearing their mask and they're wearing it properly. Sometimes people wear a mask which is, the nose is not covered, or it's going up to their chin only and the mouth and nose are totally exposed. So that is of no use.
Dr. Guleria, we have to go in for a short break, but after that, I still want to ask you, we do want to touch upon Denmark, Norway, Iceland, all of them suspending the use of AstraZeneca. So if you could just hold on, we'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Now, Dr. Guleria, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, they've suspended the use of AstraZeneca, the COVID vaccine. Severe allergy should be added to the possible side effects, said the EU's drug regulator, after likely links were found to a number of cases in Britain. This even as the European Medicines Agency said it's investigating a separate issue of blood clots, which is what prompted Denmark to suspend the use of the jab. What should we make of these reports? We're vaccinating 20 lakh Indians a day, where let's assume half of them are Covishield. So is it safe to use this AstraZeneca vaccine?
So as of now, we need to really critically look at the data, but we need to be very cautious because these are vaccines which you are giving to healthy individuals, and it's not fair if any of them has a significant side effect. There have been reports of 2 deaths, one in Denmark and one in Austria, after vaccination, where there was clotting which occurred, and one patient is in the hospital who's had what we call a pulmonary embolism, a clot in the lungs. The issue is whether this is a cause of the vaccine or this is an incidental finding, more coincidental, that after the vaccine you had got this clotting, because remember, many of the individuals who are being vaccinated have multiple comorbidities, which itself can lead to clotting and can predispose them to this type of problem. So we need to have a detailed investigation, which is always done whenever such side effects are reported, and to see whether there is a cause and effect, whether this could be the cause of the clotting that is happening. Until such time, you have to be cautious, and that is what is being done. Anaphylaxis is something that has been reported with all vaccines, a little bit more with the Pfizer vaccine because it uses a molecule known as PEG, which is polyethylene glycol, to which some people are allergic. But that is why for all individuals who get the vaccine, we ask them to wait for half an hour at the vaccination site, and the setup is always ready for any anaphylaxis or any allergic reaction that they
That's why they make you stay back for about half an hour after. But last question, Doctor, I'm out of time, but I want to ask. We talk about allergies. This is allergy season, right? Because the spring is coming and you wake up in the morning and everybody's sneezing and your nose is blocked. So is that an allergy? People with sinuses, people who are prone to this, should they be taking the vaccine if they're
Definitely.
above 60?
They should take the vaccine. So if you have any allergies, it could be a skin allergy, it could be allergic rhinitis, sneezing, running nose, it could be asthma. You still, if you are in the priority list, you should take the vaccine, because when we talk of anaphylaxis allergy, we're talking of allergy to the vaccine components, and we're not talking of a general allergy. So if you are allergic to the preservative in the vaccine, or you've had an allergic reaction to previous vaccination, then one would say that you may avoid the vaccine. Otherwise, in general, it's not a blanket statement that if you're allergic, you should not take the vaccine. Many people, and I know a large number of people who have allergic reactions, who've taken the vaccine and have had no problem at all.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Guleria. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but from what we've understood from tonight's interview and speaking with you in the past, the use of masks, physical distancing, hand hygiene and vaccination, they're the key tools to contain the spread of this viral infection. We cannot let our guard down yet. Thank you, Dr. Guleria, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.